Hello. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to be getting back into the raintime, a reading stream in which I keep leaving off. I left off, I think, twice before. And then I had to restart my PC, and apparently the saves are connected to that, so there those things go. So I started up again the other day. And it's around the nice, perfect golden hour where it's nice enough outside to not be super hot. That way I can just play without a lot of interruptions, while also keeping cool and having things be quiet. Just let me do this. And let's go. Slowly, silently searching, a gray SUV glides down the street. As he overtakes me, I cast a glance through the window at the driver, who's in his 40s, eyes glued to his navigation system. He's slowed down to no more than a crawl, his exhaust fumes bringing tears to my eyes. Then he rolls open the window and sticks out his head. "Excuse me, you happen to know Westward Grove?" he calls out in my direction. I feel an irrational urge to run, but manage to suppress it. "Westward Grove?" I ask, with a thoughtful face. "Are you sure? That can't be right. This is Ryberry." The man frowns. "It should be around here somewhere. Isn't it behind those houses?" He points towards the cul-de-sac. "Come on, sir. I've been living here for 19 years, I reply in mock indignation. "You're not going to convince me you know this place better than I do," I add. "I just drive to Abbotsford. I think they have a grove over there somewhere, though I'm not sure if it leads westward. Don't you have a GPS or something?" "I do," he groans. "It's just that it's not working well." Without even thanking me, he rolls up his window and takes off. A minute later, he's disappeared from sight entirely. An awkward cry escapes my mouth. My hands are trembling. I'm tense, exhilarated. But as I approach the liquor store, I also feel a very slight sensation of remorse. I try to forget about the poor man who will probably be driving around for quite a while longer. They keep the expensive bottles near the front counter, the cheaper ones at the back. It conveys a subtle distrust towards the customer. But then again, alcoholics can't be the easiest class of patrons to entertain. "Can I help you?" a sullen voice calls out as I pass the counter. "Just browsing." That voice, I can sense it following me. I continue further into the store, past the special offers until I'm out of reach. But it pursues, swirling around me, watching my every move. It has a suspicious, demanding tone, as if it wants me out as quick as possible. Probably thinks I'm a shoplifter of some kind. I return to the front as calmly as possible, picking up one of the special offers in passing. A synthetic domestically produced rum with a pirate ship on the label, printed on the label. I place it as an offering before the voice. That's 1950, it hums, audibly appeased. Is it a gift? Yes, I reply nervously. As it wraps the bottle in shiny wrapping paper, I can't help but let out a silent chuckle. It isn't a gift at all. Or perhaps a gift to myself. I exit the store with a finely wrapped bottle under my arm. And as I walk home, it's as if I am on my way to a birthday party. "1848. That's just great." A modern, brightly lit kitchen. She must be in her late 40s with a charming southern accent. I uncork the bottle and bring it to my mouth, carefully pouring the liquid into me until I break the flow. A tingling sensation gushes through my coat, strong at first, but diminishing steady, until nothing remains but a fickle glow. Using my tongue, I rub the stinging fluid up against my mucous membranes and all along my gums. Then I swallow. A jolt. Everything's much sharper. A fat man with an annoying voice has come on. "Disappeared in 39. Would you like 2 balls? You sure?" The room fills with sharp applause that ricochets off my eardrums painfully. I scramble to find the remote. A woman is walking on the beach. She looks happy, but she's not overly pretty. The shot moves in on her face, and she smiles. Involuntarily, I catch myself smiling too, and I unclench my jaw quickly. A wholesome voice recites an advertising slogan. It's as if nature's forcing me into mediocrity. A numb, almost death-like state of being that dominates the history of our kind, save for a few scarce exceptions. Snap out of it is nature's mantra. And maybe I should snap out of it. The warm glow spreads out from my throat, through my esophagus, into my stomach, and onwards from there to the rest of my body. The last daylight is shining through the window. The room's filled with the scent of rum, a cozy fragrance with a hint of purifying ethanol. It helps me to act normally, to act socially. It dilutes my talents, makes me as stupid as the rest. But there's nothing to it, because that's not the real me doing those things. If only I could come out as myself one day, with clear senses and a clear mind. Aggressive tremors surging through my left thigh. I jump up, spilling rum all over my mattress, and take the phone from my pocket. It keeps on buzzing for minutes on end, but the thought of talking to another person sends violent spasms of anxiety through my nervous system. I toss it under my bed sheets, where the mattress absorbs the vibrations and the blankets muffle the sound. I change the channel. You know, if there weren't any alcohol, I'd have come up with something profound by now. But it thins the paint, like turpentine, so that only watery colors remain. No deep reds or blacks, just safe, pasty pastels. And the pieces come out dull and inoffensive, like the stuff you'd hang in an office space. It dumbs me down, makes me boring and gentle like everyone else. Nobody paints with the deep blue of the ocean anymore. Outside, it started raining again. Or maybe it's just my imagination. It doesn't really matter. 1848. That's just great. I'm awoken by a persistent itch that consumes my entire body. For a while, I try to suppress the urge to scratch, but it keeps lingering playfully at the edge of my consciousness, occasionally sending sharp spikes of pain into my nervous system. That makes me quiver in agony. It's too much to ignore. I scratch my skin furiously until I feel blood coming out. Then I crumple up my shirt into a ball and proceed to rub it over my irritated body until I'm numb all over. I rescue my phone from the bed linen, reassured to see the battery's dead. The floor is a carpet of empty beer cans, soaked in pale sunlight that filters through the window. And I know it's beautiful in a naturalistic way, but I'm not in the mood to acknowledge it. Later, when I look back, I'll probably realize how much good this period has done to me. Or something banal like that. I turn on the TV, where a man in a white shirt is discussing tort reform. The sound's muted. I change channels for a while, and pass news bulletins and infomercials. There's always something about the daytime TV, like how the programming's so much brighter than at night. The overexposed studios and beaming hosts are all pale and oversaturated. Everything's so clean and light. Why can't anything be dark anymore? I continue channel surfing for a long time until I land on a program that offers my hungover eyes some rest. But it's too late. She enters again. Her hands, her cotton blouse. She's beautiful, like when I first saw her. But the more I think of her, the more that comes along. I can hear the voices again. Matt's excited shouts, the dance music, the flashing lights. It's interconnected, overpowering, rushing through my head, coming at me now that I'm at my weakest. I want to isolate her from all the noise, to cut her out, and save her for myself alone. But everything's so light, so out in the open. Sometimes it's better to hide things in darkness, to cast a light only on what's most important. As the tears fall, they draw a trail of fiery self-pity down my cheeks. I strike myself in the face. I turn off the TV and crawl under the covers. If I go to sleep now, I might wake up when it's dark again. With a loud thud, the bottle hits the floor. And as I fall into a deep, long sleep, a bright beam of sunlight inches its way towards me. When the light reaches my chest, it submerges me in a pale white glow. The rustling of fields sounds softly in the distance. It's mild outside, like the first day of spring. A soothing breath of wind. And on that day, balancing on the verge of consciousness, I cross a certain numinous border for the first time. I'm miles away from my room in Ryberry. The sun's shining through a sky of scattered clouds that drift by gently, bestowing upon the rays of light a movement that's like falling grain. There's no one here. No people, or schedules, or libraries. In this state, I no longer act or rationalize. All I truly do is perceive. I have lost myself. Time is frozen. There's nothing here. Nothing but a light that shines with the gleam of flourishing wheat. A sensation, an embrace. The maternal warmth of a realm of golden rain. Part 3. Land Reclaimed. I feel something soft, like whiskers, brushing up against my cheek. The world is regaining its hold on me. The dream evaporates. Her fragrance, the strands of chestnut hair, slowly fade away. I awaken, as from a coma, drenched sheets clinging to my body. In a frenzy, I feel around for a piece of dry fabric, but it's all wet, as if the linen has melted into a viscous bog that is slowly pulling me under. Everything from the last days must have seeped into it. I right myself. The room's in a state of utter chaos. Bottles, clothes, Library books are scattered amongst the rubbish. The books, they must have multiplied unnoticeably. No matter how many I return, no matter how much I pay in overdose fees, their numbers only rise. And I'm looking for my phone just to see if the library is still open, even though I'm scared of the countless messages it must have collected over the week. I've been hiding in my room for days now, wallowing, loathing, watching TV. After salvaging a pair of striped boxers from the depths of my laundry basket, I sit for a while, sliding the fabric gently through my fingers. Despite all the damp, the boxers have remained dry, and it comforts me for some reason. The beautiful, dry cotton. I find my phone. 12 missed calls, the fogged up display reads. Quickly I dismiss the notification. 12:33. It's late. Everything's so clammy here. I need to move quickly. On my way to the door, I gather as many books as I can, and in passing, I grab a bag of beer nuts from the box under my desk. And as I traverse the streets of Ryberry, I'm stuffing them into my mouth by the handful, as I can feel them drawing the liquid from my system. The hiss of an approaching bus shakes me from my thoughts. I sprint through the tunnel across the traffic island, signaling the bus driver to stop. Just in time. And as I pay the man, I want to thank him, profusely even, for waiting. But somehow, I can't squeeze even the slightest sound out of my throat. Not much later, a message from Bernard comes in. Just in case you've crawled out of your bunker, it's 2100 in the order tonight. Bernard doesn't give up easily. Probably still looking for someone for that stupid play of his. Lately, during my rides to Bremersburg, I've been giving in to an old fantasy I have had. A remnant of my childhood days. Looking out the window, I imagine that everything that disappears from view behind me is somehow swallowed up by nothingness. As if the bus is riding out from the epicenter of a huge, pervading earthquake that pulls everything. Trees, farms, meadows, all into its destructive wake. An opposing vehicle is torn into pieces. A wind turbine splits apart. And I gloat at the sight of the cataclysmic trail of annihilation that I leave behind. Something powerful has drawn into my steps that cannot be ignored. But as I'm sitting here, fantasizing like this, I grow aware of a thirst encroaching on me. It bothers me to such an extent that I abandon my game. I have nothing to worry about. I should just go to the altar, dismiss the questions, and play it as it comes. Lars has a similar habit, at times, of disappearing off the face of the earth for a while. He does it when he has exams or a new girl. But I'd be sad somehow. It'd be sad. You shut yourself in your room for days on end, hiding from the light, drowning your sorrows. Around me, great pylons of steel protrude from the landscape. I blast them into smithereens. It should come from a place of beauty, or woe. If I had cried in grief, now that would have meant something. But this? For shame? The bus reaches the first suburb of the city. It's a working class district, made up of modern polymorphous housing projects that straddle the horizon in every direction. Whenever I've been away for a while, Bremersburg always makes an impression on me. After turning into the austere bus station, I exit the vehicle. And as I swagger down the platform into a tormented gait, a tingling pride takes hold of my body. I'm back again after all. Many a great man has caved under lighter pressure. I'm looking for something sharp to keep me awake. Christmas tunes and specials for mulled wine lull me into a false sense of security. No better way to spend the holidays than drinking alone. I want to sublimate, to slowly merge into thin air, until there's nothing left but a dissipating white mist. I pull out a heavy bottle from the bottom shelf. Old Gold, the label reads, and distilled beverage with whiskey aroma, in smaller print below. It's a whole liter for only $12.95. Seems like a foregone conclusion. The lady behind the counter, late 50s, is staring at me from under her long gray hair, with a worried expression on her face. And I wonder if there's a particular reason why she's looking at me like that. Or if this is just the default face she makes. It can't be easy for her to work the register at her age. Her co-workers must all be college kids coming and going with great futures ahead. And all the while, she's just sitting there. $12.95. Crash your card. I'm shaken for my thoughts. That's a big bottle you got there. You have a party on tonight? No, I mumble as I search for my wallet. I am drinking this one all by myself. Those plump cheeks, her mouth, her wrinkles. They have a vague sense of familiarity about them that I just can't place. And now she's rolling the bottle in a sheet of tissue paper, with great care as if she's wrapping an infant. I watch her do it, very tenderly, her frightened expression almost gone. She's glancing at me with a motherly smile on her face. And somehow, the whole image leaves a mealy taste in my mouth. There you go. Enjoy your weekend. I want to get out of here, but I feel an urge to say something to her, as she's making it all so personal. It's nice and dry up here, I stutter, while stuffing the bottle into my book bag. That's what he came up with. As I turn to leave, I try to grab a napkin from the big pile on the counter, but they're all stuck together, causing half of them to flutter onto the floor. I exit the store in a rush, leaving the mess behind. Casually, as if an appointment there, I step into the doorway. In vain, I attempt to free the bottle from its paper bandages, but I can't seem to find the opening. Losing patience, I tear free its neck, loosen the cap, and try to take a small sip. But it's heavy and spirit gushes out uncontrollably. I choke, drops running down my chin, my taste buds throbbing. I wipe my face with my coat sleeve and step down from the doorway. No one's seen a thing. North of the bus station, there's a residential area with apartment complexes that vaguely resemble cell blocks. We should be covering Herder in class next week, if I recall my schedule correctly. Gottfried. Old bastard. A decent place to jump back in. I may even still know something about the guy, like how he was so paranoid about Danubians that he'd bring a gun with him to the bathroom. And as I'm walking along, minding my own business, I begin to notice a soft, sweeping noise behind me. I continue on for a while, listening closely, until I realize that it's not so much a sweeping, but more of a panting sound that I hear. The sullen gasps grow slowly louder. Could this be a stalker prowling after me? A twisted mind that preys on pretty boys. I turn around to see that it's not a stalker at all, but just an ordinary dog. The beast must be 3 foot tall at least. A Labrador, or a retriever perhaps. I don't really know my dogs too well. It's sitting down on the pavement now, staring at me with its drowsy, subservient eyes. Those eyes remind me of Bernard for some reason, but not in a bad way. I snap my fingers in an attempt to elicit a reaction from the mutt, and then I let out a short, sharp whistle. But it doesn't move an inch. It probably belongs to a bunch of druggies who've kicked him out for chewing up their squad or something. I turn and continue onward, with the full intent of leaving the beast behind. But it follows me, at a respectable distance. A dog's a slave trained to obey, faithfully, till the ends of times. They're suited for the weaker kind that needs to dominate someone or something, just to feel better about themselves. And for a moment I feel sorry for the beast. Throughout his life, he's been condemned to an arbitrary master, appointed by fate alone. His owner sets the rules for all of his existence, determines what he eats, if he breeds, how he lives and dies. We continue our journey, and the idea of a big hound pursuing me through the streets cheers me up a little inside. I wonder how long he'll keep up this game. Would he follow me into the city center? Or come into the library with me? Meanwhile, the dog's panting has swelled to a heavy rasp. I pause to let him rest for a bit. I pull the bottle from my bag again, drink from it, carefully, and then proceed to pour a little onto the ground. The liquid forms a dark gray puddle on the pavement. The dog's following my actions with a curious look in its eye. Look, I murmur. You don't have to live this way. I'm setting you free. You can do whatever you want now. I take a step back invitingly. The dog gets up, sniffs at the puddle, and draws his tongue over the wet concrete. And I can see the spirit hitting him. He jumps back startlingly and settles down a few feet away, eyeing me closely. I bend over to pour him some more, but even before the first drops hit the pavement, he's jumped forward, thrusting his mouth under the opening of the bottle. And I look on bemusedly as he manages to take 3 mouthfuls of whiskey before I stop pouring. He's developed a real taste for the stuff. I wonder if he's used to alcohol at home, if he gets it from the crusties. I pour some more onto the ground and look on as he licks it up eagerly. But suddenly a noise from above. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" a female voice shouts out furiously. I freeze and look upwards to where a red-faced woman with bleached blonde hair has stepped out onto the balcony. "I saw what you did there, sicko! Trying to get that dog drunk," she shouts. I panic for an instant, frantically searching for a way out of the situation. Then I get a hold of myself. I raise my voice and in a controlled manner I state, "This is not a problem, madam. This is my dog." Oh. The woman's leaning out further now, trying to assess the situation. "No way," she shouts back. "No chance in hell that you're getting your own dog drunk on scotch. Do you want me to come down for you, sicko?" I stifle a laugh. "No, this is all hunky-dory, madam," I call back. "He likes whiskey. I don't give him too much. It's mostly the taste he's interested in." And for a second she shuts up, staring at me in a manner that almost betrays humility. She seems taken aback by the scene down below, unable to process the surrealism of it all. The boy, the bottle, the dog, greedily licking its lips. "Nonsense!" she finally cries out. "I'm calling the police right now." And with that, she disappears back inside. Quietly, I screw the back of the cap on the bottle. But the police will have a field day with her. Crazy old bag. Of all the things to make a fuss about, I set course for the university quarter, and somehow without any reason of its own, my mind wanders. And when the lake finally fell dry, it was a period of great entrepreneurship in our nation. It was a turbulent time in which a small group of pioneers stood up and voiced the radical desire to banish out the night forever, so that only daylight would remain. It could have been that they were afraid of the dark, or tired of the dull circadian rhythm of night and day. Some even whispered that they were all part of a secret cabal, but I wouldn't go as far as to state that. Anyway, as you may have heard, it was difficult at first to find inhabitants for the newly formed island. It was an infernal wasteland full of flies. "And spiders," I murmur. No, this was before the spiders came, during the first few years of the polder. The enemies of the night, mainly rich industrialists, had drawn up a plan for a small village of simple houses. Everything was financed through their business ventures, and within no time they received green light from the government, who were happy enough to see people and money flowing into the land reclaimed. Within a year and a half, the village was as good as done. It had the best infrastructure in the polder, with paved roads, underground plumbing, and even its own small power plant. The cottages were simple in design, like holiday homes with thick shutters covering the windows. Offices and pubs had been erected and parks were laid out. But what they had failed to disclose at the time of project submission was that a tall light mast was to be built in the center of the village. A giant lighthouse, 50 yards high. And every evening at sunset, the light went on. It began burning slowly until the lamp reached its full capacity around midnight, and the whole village was enveloped in a dazzling light that shone as bright as the sun. And every morning, at dawn, the lanterns slowly died out again. The residents used the village as a base for their exploits, where the sun shone night and day, and life never came to a halt. They threw parties around the clock, held orgies and raves, but they weren't able to enjoy their illuminated escape for long. Because even though it was nice for the first few days, things went downhill quickly. It were the flies. In the beginning, they only posed a slight nuisance, humming through the streets night and day. They came from the immediate vicinity to evaporate in the scorching heat of the glow. But the tower shone so immensely bright that it could have been seen from miles away. And after a few days, a true exodus came underway. Slowly but steadily, more and more flies were drawn into the tower. They flew up against the lantern and dropped down, dead. And the streets around the base had to be swept perpetually to keep up with the piles and piles of corpses. Then, 18 days after the lights first went on, it swelled into a plague. It was as if all the flies of the island had suddenly descended upon the village. The air was speckled. Charred bodies fell like rain from the skies. People had to remain indoors. Driving became dangerous. And the light went out. The flies must have become so too much for it. Their corpses caked to the glass of the lantern, turning it into a pitch-black orb from which no ray of light could ever escape. The village was cast in suffocating, impenetrable darkness. It was a new moon that night. Street lights were never installed in that town. And the eyes of the villagers were completely unaccustomed to the level of darkness they behold. That night, 2 residents drowned in the park ponds. There were a total of 7 traffic accidents resulting from the panicked rush in which people attempted to leave. A few houses burned down as people lit bonfires in an attempt to drive out the night. The village is part of Abbotsford Holiday Park now. The mast is being used as a radio tower, I mumble. The inner ring, a blight on the city. Disgusting and busy as always. See them sitting there, cooped up in their vehicles, not even offering me the chance to cross. A traffic light farther down the road turns red, and the long line of cars comes to a halt. I walk up to the roadside, but as I cross, I can already see the next wave of cars looming in the distance. Hastily, I run the last few feet to the traffic island, just as the first car passes behind me. Suddenly, screeching brakes, then a crash. I crouch into a ball and wait, trembling as the traffic behind me comes to a standstill. When I've mustered enough courage to look around, there's a long row of cars lined up on the tarmac. The first to brake seems to be driving around something carefully. There's a dark patch on the road. It's the dog. A first head protrudes from the car window. The dog. Where did he come from so suddenly? He must have quietly followed me after the argument with the woman and swaggered out onto the inner ring in his drunken stupor. I'd completely forgotten about the beast. The driver exits her car. She's looking at me with a confused look on her face. There's grief in her eyes, as if it's my dog that's lying there. Eyes closed and completely motionless. The man who hit the dog is parked at the side of the road now, studying his front bumper. I look over to the body again and I imagine I see a faint smile across its lifeless face. I can feel my legs growing heavy, as if they're slowly pulling me earthward. What do they expect? A beast that only follows. You can't drop your guard for even a second. I'm not strong enough to bear that burden. Tears are welling in my eyes. I'm sorry. Lo siento, the driver calls out. And at that moment, I jump down from the traffic island and squeeze through the row of cars back into the city center. All the while, the drivers seem to be following my every motion. And as I blow my nose into my coat sleeve, I realize that this is the first time in a really long time that I've truly felt cold. So I planted a corpse. Will it bloom next year? I want to give up. I want to call my... Go on. It's quiet in the university quarter for a Friday, but it's getting late in the library, and the library closes at 5. The iron curriculum of my courses has begun to irritate me. It takes all the spontaneity out of my studies. If I weren't dependent on my scholarship for cash, I'd have dropped the whole travesty a long time ago. I'm about to take the broad stairs that lead down to the main entrance, when suddenly, I see Matt exiting the building. I freeze. He's just standing there, scanning around as if he's blinded by the light. Then, he catches sight of me. It's too late. He's hopping up the stairs like a bunny. Hey, William, we've been missing you. What are you doing? I just killed a dog, I reply gravely. He pauses for a second. Oh, I'm sure that happens to the best of us. He laughs awkwardly. But anyway, you went completely AWOL for a week. It's good to see you around town. I was sick for a few days, I reply. But now I'm good to go. I'm pleasantly surprised. Matt seems unfazed by my disappearance. These things are never as bad as I make them out to be. But hey, I continue, I still have some books to hand in. See you this evening. Books to hand in? Matt chuckles. Good luck with that. The library closes at 4 on Saturday. Ah, yes, Saturday, I murmur. Then I have to. Useless, Matt interrupts. Like people don't study on the weekends. But we've been thrown out. The work week is over. Now to squander our wages on some hard-earned liquor. There isn't much to do at the university quarter during weekends. When the faculties close, the students flock to the city center, or to their dorm buildings at the edge of town. Most of the professors live outside the polder. At the end of their day, they leave Bremersburg over a neatly deserted N723, glared at by the thousands of stationary commuters that are stuck in traffic on the opposite lane. And the university buildings are left behind, empty, with their gray concrete exteriors that look damp even on dry days and turn pitch black in the rain. These surroundings have always make a clammy impression on me. They chase the students off the streets, into the pubs, into their books. I remember I haven't opened a textbook in weeks and feel a familiar sensation of dread turning its head. That feeling that always slumbers somewhere deep inside my inner being, flaring up at the worst of moments. I hate it, each and every inch of it. I try to divert my mind towards other things. Matt's leading the way in his Navy sports jacket. He's really too old to be wearing something like that. He's at university, for God's sake. Wouldn't a more formal style be appropriate by now? I try to laugh at my thoughts, but in reality, I can't. As in the end, I don't think it's much of a laughing matter. You know a good place around here? Matt asks. I ponder. This story is going to give me nightmares with library books I haven't returned. I'm sorry, Billy. Maybe you should have returned them. The Arto, maybe. Matt shakes his head without looking back. Nah, it's always empty over there. And this annoys me. Why doesn't he think of something himself, if he's just gonna turn down my suggestions? But he can be an annoying little prat like that, with that arrogant, dim-witted look in his eyes, and his black, curly hair. Mommy's boy. Let's go to the bar in Alexandria, Matt suggests. You get a nice view of the city from there. But then we need to go all the way back to the center again. Matt's crossed the street. I followed suit. You have to, but Aunt is laughing, matey. What? No. Sure. No problem, right? What way were you heading? But I'm not headed anywhere. So, what are you doing for Christmas? Matt's heading back to the table with a glass of apple juice in his hands. Nothing. I still have stuff to catch up on. Recits. Or recits. You can celebrate the New Year's at my place. Everyone's coming. Nice. I'm tired. I sip my coffee. It looks dark outside, but that could be because there's these trendy sheets covering the windows. Coffee's expensive here, I mutter. You come here often? Nah, Matt answers. Just for the view. But there really isn't much of a view up here. There's garbage covering the windows. I tear open my sugar packet and empty it into my coffee. Matt remains quiet. Around us, groups of older women are sitting with shopping bags under their tables. A lot of fake people in here, I comment. Look at them, with their shopping bags. They probably think it's a place to be seen, I add. That's how they get to charge so much for the coffee. Matt still isn't talking, and he seems uncomfortable, as though he's having second thoughts about coming here with me. I'm starting to feel a bit sorry for him, but then... So how did you get on with Jasmine? I don't move an inch. I knew that was coming. It's Matt, after all. What do you mean? I reply curtly. Matt has a curious expression on his face, but there's cruelty hiding in his eyes. Nothing interesting happened, I continue. Don't worry. Matt laughs. Nothing interesting happened? I know your tricks, William. So tell me about all the interesting stuff that didn't happen. You see those women sitting there? What a funny joint this is. Don't change the subject, William. I want to hear it all. Nothing much happened. We kissed, stuff like that, nothing more. Stuff like that? Matt squeezed his eyes into slits, causing the birthmark on his right temple to disappear completely into the folds of his skin. Okay, I get the picture. William and Jasmine. Who would have thought? And I've had enough of it. Matt's ruining again. Ruining it again, touching it, perverting it with his tiny mind that turns everything into a crass joke. Some things can't be discussed with the likes of him. They get lost in translation. And it's not even a bad time. I've been thinking about ending our friendship for a while now. We're too different, the two of us. I can't continue lowering myself to his level. I clear my throat. Stop it. Matt seems taken aback. Stop it, Matt. This is posh lost. You're humiliating me. I pick up a magazine from the table and begin browsing through it. Come on, William. I tell you stuff all the time. Posh lost, Matt. Posh lost. What is that word? Matt asks. It's Russian, Matt. Not translatable. I'm pretending to read the magazine. But what does it mean then? Matt continues, finally distracted from his stupid inquisition. There's really no equivalent in English. You have to know Russian to understand. But I can tell you one thing, Matt. Your drivel is the textbook example of posh lust. You're being a pedantic bastard right now. Translate it for me or shut up. Your shit is the translation, Matt. You are posh lust. Essential posh lust. That's enough of a translation for now. Shut up. I interrupt him while looking at my watch. But I must leave. I have an appointment in 15 minutes. I stand up and fold the magazine under my arm dramatically. We're drinking tonight, aren't we? I call back. See you then. You have an appointment? Matt asks incredulously. I leave the cafe in a hurried scuffle. That magazine isn't even yours, I can hear Matt calling after me. As I've been living above my means for a while now, I decide to eat at the cafeteria tonight. I cross the central square in northward direction, and after following the end of the busy shopping street, I arrive at the junction that connects the inner rings to the road that leads to the harbor. Over the motorway hangs a narrow footbridge. Its steel latticework painted darker brown by rust and exhaust fumes. As I mount the staircase, I can hear the structure moaning under my weight. Large traffic lights sprout from the bridge, like giant unripe fruit. I'm gonna turn the game up a little bit. I can see their bulbs and fuses, and the thick wiring that keeps them all together. In unison, they ripen, from green to orange to red, directing the flow of the herds that ride beneath. And the thick catenary wires of the trolley buses hang suspended just below me, so close that I can almost touch them. I wonder if that would kill me. Those who've tried can't tell the tale, I guess. I pull a coin from my pocket and throw it onto some of the wires. It makes contact briefly, but nothing happens. No connection to the earth. Suddenly, I sense something large moving in my direction. It's a man. Late 50s, mildly obese, approaching me from the opposite end of the bridge. He's stepping forth mindlessly, looking down as though he's lost in his thoughts. The bridge is too narrow. There's not enough room for the two of us to pass, not with his build. The thought comes up in me just to turn back and let him cross. But lately, I've come to the decision that I don't really want to be that kind of person anymore. I pull my shoulders back and attempt to look him dead in the eye. He's closer now, head still aimed downwards, but then he looks up at me and hesitates. It's all right, he stammers, barely audible. You come this way. I'll go back. He's just about to turn around, but for some reason, his complete and utter lack of resistance fills me with a strong sense of disgust, which embarrasses me for some reason. No, it's okay, I reply. And in a split second, gripping the balustrade tightly with my right hand, I push past the man. A scuffle ensues. He grunts loudly, and with a big heave we break loose. In passing, Our faces are pushed close together. And I'm sure that during that split instant, I can detect a look of the most pure, unspoken horror in his eyes. I'm terribly sorry, I call back at him as I continues towards the other end of the bridge. As I continues. But he's just staring after me, with that stupefied expression. Let him gawk like that. That way, he might feel a little less pathetic about himself. I started breathing louder from the effort, and as I walk down the stairs, the putrefied air of the inner ring hits my respiratory system in full force. After violently rinsing my mouth with old gold, I hold my breath for the next 4 blocks, until I'm back safely in the university quarter. As I'm waiting in line for a plate of honest food, my gaze drifts over the cafeteria. There are a few old guys sitting around, who always eat here. We call them the elders of the dining hall. They probably don't have wives, or their wives don't have husbands. But in the end, they're likely the only reason this place is even opened on a Saturday. There's a nice specimen sitting at the front of the hall, wearing a tattered scarf and gray trousers with lots of pockets. I take the seat next to him. He's eating one of those puff pastry pies. A bad choice, as it's a cold, greasy mess that's to be avoided at all costs, unless they're serving chicken instead of fish. The chicken's always dry here. And I'm sitting there, poking around, in the slice of salmon on my plate. It feels tender, and the potatoes seem fine as well, but the vegetables will have to go. The man is eating like a pig. It's obvious that he's having trouble cutting manageable pieces from his pie. Some vegetables roll off his plate and onto the floor, and he's just staring after them with a puzzled look on his face. Probably sad that he got to eat less now. After having some of my fish, I turn to him. So, you come here often? He stares up at me with the same confused expression on his face as when his vegetables fell to the ground. After chewing down the food in his mouth, he answers me, over-articulating all of his syllables. Well, that's nice of you to ask. His vocal cords are squealing. I can barely contain my laughter. He continues eating silently for a while, as if he's forgotten my question altogether. But then, after a minute or two, he turns to face me again. Well, as a matter of fact, I come here regularly. The food's excellent. Absolutely excellent. He's still squealing. A dry, hoarse sound, as if a piece of pastry has lodged itself in his windpipe. There are groups of students sitting around at tables, talking among one another. I'm pretty sure they're all freshmen, as droning up to eat at the cafeteria is really something that only freshmen would do. They're really enjoying it too. The food. Just look at them. I have some of my potatoes, eat the fish, and push the rest of the plate aside. The man's looking on with a startled expression on his face. Are you not eating that? He squeaks. But I ignore him and focus on the freshman. It's no longer what I thought it would be. Learning new theories, discussing lectures. It had magic about it at first, as if you were standing before an insurmountable summit. But it wears out quickly, the rush, the excitement. Sometimes it's no fun when you think things over too much. Maybe it's better to be a freshman, with an empty mind. To eat the disgusting puff pastry pies just like everyone else, without carrying a higher consciousness around with you. Because it's not that great in the end. Sitting in a musty cafe, regurgitating old anecdotes in order to sound clever. And suddenly, it's like something in the dining hall is out of place. I look to my side where the man continues eating. Why is he so old? Why isn't he a freshman? The faint taste of fish still lingers on my palate, but not even a trace of salt remains. My eyes are welling up with tears. I feel an urge to rinse my mouth again. It's as if a pool of stagnant water lies deep within my esophagus. I can't bear it any longer. I grab my phone and call Lars. Why is he so old? Asking a real question. Right. It's Lars. His voice sounds so confused, as if he doesn't even know who's calling. Lars, it's William. Wilhelm! Marlin zit the nation gesprochen Deutsch. Oh. Yeah, fine, I reply. Say, I'm operating under the assumption that there will be an opportunity to consume some alcoholic beverages tonight. I wish I knew how to speak German. I'm trying to sound funny, but my voice is breaking and the words come out awkwardly. Sure we will. See you tonight, Lars replies. I thank him and hang up the phone. Lars and the Real Girls is such a great movie. Never watched it. Are you going to eat that? It's the old man again. He's pointing at the remnants of my meal. But I have to take him seriously. He's essentially just a frosh like all the others. We all live by grace of the fact that we aren't dead. If we were immortal, would we still be alive? I say it out loud without turning around. Beside me, the man has started sputtering. But first you must eat something, I tell him, sliding my plate in his direction. I don't want it, he murmurs. It's just a shame to waste food like that. His voice is no longer making that shrieking noise. The piece of pastry must have dislodged itself. We'll add it to the list then, Billy. It's a hopeless endeavor sometimes, but maybe he'll come to his senses one day. I'm just about ready to leave. He's a frosh, for God's sake. We're all frosh. Sorry. I follow the zebra crossing and enter the humble housing district that connects the city center to the harbor. The streets here radiate meaninglessness, as if they're burdened by the realization that they only serve to keep two city subdivisions connected. People passing through here always have something higher on their minds, either the harbor or the city center. It's a depressing place, usually, but I still have that strange buzz from the cafeteria over me. It's driving me forward, upping my pace, filling my clothes with pleasant, warm air, until I don't even feel the weight of my bag anymore. I'm light, as though my sleeves are pulling me forward. Meanwhile, the streetlights have begun warming up slowly, pink torches in a sea of green. As my tempo increases, they come together in brightly colored lines, and whenever I pass a side road, they draw out elongated trapezoid shapes that extend far into the distance. The whole ambiance brings me into a mood of supreme. I'm yearning for the night. The city's surmountable to me, with its friendly colors. A kindly green with pretty pink lines. And the moment is there. All motley beasts around me, and something great's about to unfold. I pull out my bottle in plain sight of the road. The liquid spinning in a dark brown vortex, and I can make out small particles of something or other floating around. I lift the bottle to my nose and let the vapors drift forth. 40% is volatile. It grows wings and flies away the second it gets a chance. A glass bauble, with a content rarer than air. Light, flammable, clean. Ascend. I drink and wait anxiously for the moment I take flight. The seconds pass. Nothing's happening. The gray station wagon passes by and envelops me in a cloud of smog. It's too warm, too earthy, after all. The powerful gases have long since escaped, drifted off to the angels. Only a foul sludge remains. Yep. As I swing open the doors of the Otter, I realize it's still too early. No one's here yet. I take a seat at the bar and order a beer. Everything feels so strange today. Nobody ever talks to the elders of the dining hall. What did I say about immortality and death? In the first sip I take, there's a distinct note of malt that seems too intense for the weaker beer they serve at this place. The brew has a color of the deepest ochre. Outside, the lanterns are now burning white. Even when I close my eyes, I have trouble recalling the pink glow they had just a minute ago. I pick up my glass and move to one of the couches in the back of the pub. The feeling is subsiding rapidly. And to comfort myself, I softly scratch my nails through the velvet upholstery. The rough cloth gives way easily when I press my thumb into it. I need to rub it a bit to give it back its shape. It's lost its elasticity. I see Lars coming in, and stop rubbing the sofa immediately. He orders a beer with his forehead looking exceptionally high in the yellow lamplight. How are you? His voice raises slightly at the last syllable. I'm fine, Lars. Or, I don't know. Strange things have been happening. I'll just be a minute. He picks up his beer from the bar and says something to the bartender. Have you seen Bernard yet? I ask. Lars crouches down beside me and nods distantly. Dr. Rank can look after himself, don't you think? But you said something about weird things happening? He adds. What kind of troubles have you been getting yourself into this time? I'm silent. Occasionally, it occurs that a series of, at first sight, unusual events follow each other in rapid succession. Now, whenever something like this happens, it can seem almost certain that something strange or supernatural is going on. But of course, that's a ridiculous notion. In the end, it's just a matter of chance. In fact, it would be a lot stranger to lead a life in which unusual things never occurred at all. Lars is staring at me. Do you feel like the colors are different today? I ask. There could be a fog. He sounds dismissive, but his reply still reassures me that I'm not the only one to have seen something. Bernard enters the pub and comes over. You know, I continue, sometimes I feel like there's a tension hanging over this island. As if the sea had plans which were ruined by its reclamation. You know what I mean? That's interesting, Bernard breaks in. David Kluwer is conducting research into the formation of the polder. There was a lecture today. Kluwer is a charlatan, Lars interjects. I crawl back into the dingy cushions and leave them be. I'm picking at the sofa and looking around. Bernard is at the bar, talking to Evelyn, and a girl named Molly. It's difficult to figure out why they even take him seriously. He's got no more to say than what he's heard from his professors today, or what he saw on the news. It's facts, just trivial knowledge. He isn't smart or witty or a genius. He's just got too much free time on his hands, that's all. Any obsessive neurotic can line his facts straight like him. But I have a certain feeling, a superior insight into matters. That takes a whole different approach. And I'm sure Bernard's going to do fine with the ladies in a year or so. And bohemian appearance, but a mentality of servitude, volontaire. That really ups your chances among the higher class whores. See that broad jawline and those droopy eyes? Too stupid to be fired and too cowardly to cheat. Don't change anything. They'll fall for it. Like flies. Strange noises behind us. I turn around to see an old man rushing into the tunnel. He has a strange limp that causes him to let out a soft, low groan every time he lifts up his right foot. He's gaining on us, albeit quite slowly. We ignore him for a while, but the closer he approaches, the louder his grunts and shouts become. After a minute or so, he overtakes us, and I can see that his mouth is stretched open wide in an unnatural grimace, as if he's been frightened by something. A thin thread of saliva runs down his lower lip. But what strikes me most is that, in all, he seems to have a well-kept appearance that doesn't match the bewildered expression on his face. He's wearing a nice shirt, and even though there's some drool on his dark brown beard, you can see that it's been groomed carefully. He looks quite healthy for someone who's limping and groaning like that. We exit the tunnel and the man disappears around the corner. Did you see him go? Lars mutters. Seemed to be in quite the hurry. Must be a tard hour at the pavilion tonight, Bernard chuckles. Yeah, they should lock those types up somewhere, Lars continues. They can cause a lot of damage when they're out on the loose like that. There's something serious in his voice, as though he totally means what he's saying. He seems scared, I comment. Maybe something's come out of the lake. Boy, you're drunk. At the outskirts of town, where no one's bothered by the noise, you have to leave the road and follow a narrow concrete pavement to reach the Golden Pavilion. It's not much of a pavilion, though. A lone lamp post illuminates the queue of about 8 people. The ground's vibrating. Shouldn't have a problem getting in tonight, Matt says as we join the queue. I was refused entry once because there weren't enough girls waiting in line. I'd refuse you entry any time, Bernard sneers. Shut the fuck up, Bernard. I comfort myself with the thought that, once I'm inside, I won't have to listen to them anymore. Everything dissolves into sweat and sound. The security guard is beckoning us forward and the doors open. A deluge of noise blares out over the fields. Music and humans everywhere. We squeeze our way through the crowd until we find a spot with a trace amount of elbows missing near the back of the room. I can see Matt is trying to dance around a bit, but he gives up quickly to my relief. Bernard's pushing us to go on further. We comply, and for a while it only ends up getting busier. Until we finally reach a decent place to the ring, to the right of the stage. Lars is shouting something in my ear, laughing. I nod. No idea what he's trying to convey. I'm sick and out of place. Matt disappears to get a beer. 2 rounds and a half hour later, it's filling up around us. I'm going to the bathroom, I shout, but the boys don't hear me. I've pushed through a thicket of arms, shirts, caps, the foul bodies, the heavy feeling in my stomach, Matt's lameness. They all accumulate into a persistent sense of nausea that I am itching to get rid of. There's an attendant sitting at the toilets, but I've decided for myself that his entire reason is baseless in a place like this, so I continue without paying. It's 80 cents, I can hear him shout. I'm trying to throw up in one of the cubicles. I gag a few times, but it's in vain. I'm not nearly sick enough. What goes in doesn't always come out. Sometimes part of it stays behind. Somewhere. In an attempt to avoid my friends, I pass along the edge of the dance floor and climb up onto the stage, which is filled with people and disco lights. Spasmodically, the lamps spring back and forth, casting their beams through blades of colored paper that slowly pass by in front of them. Every now and then, something lights up amongst the crowd. In the green, the back of a girl. In purple, a sweaty face. The lights move in completely different rhythm than the people, their beams jumping with frantic, engineered complexity, while the crowd's just drowsily drifting along on a beat. Close to giving up. Then suddenly, in the middle of the dance floor, a strand of golden hair. It's just a glimpse for a fraction of a second. A frozen frame. Until the spotlight jerks away and the room turns back into a tangle of dancing flesh. I try to peer into the crowd to catch an impression of the girl, but she vanished from sight completely. Did she have pale cheeks? Doll's eyes? There was something peculiar about that lock of hair. It was as fine as spun silk, without a drop of sweat in it. And then, I see it again. Same hair, two black eyes. There's something hiding beneath those pale curls. I keep peering until I have a better view of her. She's dancing exuberantly, as if she's trying to rid herself of something. And in a split second, it's as if I can see the course of her entire life unfolding in front of me. She'll meet a guy, not tonight, but in the coming 5 years. She'll take him to meet her parents, they'll marry, have kids, 2 or 3, maybe a divorce. And suddenly, one night, when she's 65, she'll realize that she's thrown her life away, that she's lost her youth, that she'll never achieve anything of real lasting significance. I want to take her in my arms, to comfort her, to tell her she's actually worth something. I jump down from the stage. I push through the crowd hastily, no longer caring about the sweat. I'm not the slightest bit nauseous anymore. Ow! Someone shouts out behind me. I turn around to see a guy, short, gelled up in hair, looking at me angrily. He's calling me something incomprehensible. I laugh at him. He tries to take a swing at me, but I'm too far already. It's no use fighting in an overcrowded nightclub, and the girl with the golden hair is nowhere to be found. I'm less confident now, becoming frantic. I look back at the stage. This is where she was when I saw her. I shouldn't have wavered. I push through another row of dancing silhouettes and end up in the middle of a circle of frames. But none of the women here is blonde. A short, thick girl is staring me down suspiciously. She's one of those wide-eyed heifers who must have eaten too much beef. Holy fucking God! I feel an arm on my shoulder, and a guy built 7 feet tall lifts me up out of the circle in a patronizing manner. I'll allow it. The farmer's upset. I've been staring at his cattle for too long. So where did you come from? Matt suddenly screams into my ear. Nothing. Took a piss. Have you seen a blonde girl around here? Dark eyes? Matt looks at me with a stupid expression on his face. A girl? Is that a good idea right now, William? You're pretty drunk. I pull away and dive back into the crowd. Matt's a lost cause, just like Bernard. I have nothing really to expect from them. In the end, it's all just one big disappointment. I squeeze myself to the other side of the room and climb on stage once more, but she's nowhere to be found. She's nowhere to be found, and she was so beautiful, like a pleasant day in spring, far, far away from here. I'm standing outside, rapidly breathing in the midnight air. I swagger forward a bit, stumble, grasp on to the lone lamp post, in an attempt to right myself, but I fall down into the grass with the light shining down on me. My ears are throbbing. The dampened music from the club resounds across the fields, and I can hear a few voices coming from the queue. They sound friendly. Nobody's drunk yet. Me neither. Just tired. And as I'm lying there on my side, brushing my fingers through the long grass, the soft blades offer a fragile resistance, and I spend a moment stroking them until I encounter something delicate growing in the field. I move my head out of the light and discern a small purple flower. A flower, awake, in a place like this. I bend over to take a closer look, so far that my face is almost pressed into the grass. Everything is motionless, and I can see it sharply now. The small blossom in all its glory. It's beautiful, with its petals stretched out into full bloom. I can see every intricate detail, its tiny ovary and pistils. They have a soft pink glow over them. A flower that blooms in the deepest of night. It should be asleep by now, but its petals haven't folded. I must be going mad. Why is it blossoming right now? There's no insect around to pollinate it. Does the streetlight shine brighter than the winter sun? And I stay there and think to myself these thoughts, and they're so empowering that I'm moved to the brink of tears. I want to wait here until the blonde-haired girl comes out. The midnight flower would make a beautiful gift to her, although I wouldn't pick it, but just show it here, to her as it is. She'd probably like it better that way. Suddenly, I recall that I've left my bag inside the club. It doesn't really matter. I'll pick it up in a week, next week. As long as I get those library books back. After a while, shrill voices come down to haunt me. They're trying to push me out, swelling steadily, laughing, screaming. I look up to see where the sound's coming from, but I'm blinded by the light of the street lamp. I let them chase me away and walk into a nearby field. The terrain is coarse here, as though it hasn't been worked on for a long time. When I look back at the pavilion, there's no one near the lamppost. And as I walk further into the field, the light decays. But there's still a noise inside my head that's only growing stronger. I don't know where I'll sleep tonight. There's no easy way home. The night bus doesn't come by here. I can't hear the music anymore. The club's too far back and the humming in my head is drowning it out. A small fence bumps into me in the dark, and I climb over it, into the next field. And then, after I've walked for a while, the club far behind me, I'm struck by the creeping sensation that something colossal is nearby. I pause to look around, and then I see it. Not far from me, maybe 10 feet to my left, there's a spot of pitch darkness, not even illuminated by the faint moonlight. I stare at it, but my vision's blurry. The black spot seems to reach upward, and the noise is louder than ever now. Then it dawns upon me. I'm standing at the foot of a giant turbine. Standing solitary in the dead of night, with a base so black that I can only make out a vague silhouette. I feel the heavy colossus towering over me, but I don't even dare to look up at it, for fear of the debilitating sense of insignificance that would instill me. I sink to my knees. It's a massive pillar, must have a diameter of at least 10 feet. I try to raise my head a little, but the mental image of the immeasurable machine hanging over me pushes me downward with an inhuman force. And the noise hits me again. It's almost deafening now, and I realize that it's not coming from inside my head at all. There's only one thing that can cause that incessant tone, that maddening hum that vibrates like a sail in the wind. It's the rotor blades, hanging there above me. They're still in motion, rushing through the night sky at tremendous speeds. The ground shakes. I lose my balance, as if I'm suddenly aware of the world turning below me. And though it takes the greatest of efforts, I manage to crawl away from that wretched spot. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. I want to build a great art collection when I'm older. Evelyn smiles. And then I'll leave it to the metropolitan when I die. That'd be the best way to become immortal. Metropolitan. So you've given up on doing paintings yourself, I ask? The thick cotton jacket she's wearing emphasizes her stocky build. We're alone in the harbor. Even though it's close to the new year, there's still quite a few yachts lying in the water, covered with plastic tarps. Yeah, I can't really paint anyway. She's taking the easy way out already. A girl like that, in the prime of her life. But it's cool. They'll name a wing in my honor, or maybe I'll get an exhibition. She laughs shyly, almost as if she's ashamed of her ambitions. Misplaced shame, as there's nothing more mundane than buying up a pile of old pictures and hanging them on a wall. That doesn't prove anything to the world. I try my best to banish out the thoughts. It's nice that she wanted to meet up with me. So what do you want to do, William, after you're done? I don't really know if I'll ever be done. And I don't know. I can't imagine. What do you mean? She asks. I'll probably end up homeless somewhere. She's silent. I mean, sorry, maybe get a job as an editor at humanities, I don't know how to pronounce that. Or I'd like to write history books. I wish I hadn't said history books. It sounds boring. That's great, William. So have you done anything yet? She adds. What? Written anything? Not really, but I do get a lot of books from the library for research. You should see my overdue fees. So, being an author would be pretty great, I continue. But don't worry, it won't happen anyway. She sighs loudly. William, don't be so hard on yourself. I'm sure you'll make it if you wanted to. She's trying to be amiable, but I can detect a shiver in her voice. So why did you want to meet up? I ask. Her lips pursed together in childish severity. We're worried about you, William. We? Who are we? I'm trying to have a bit of fun with her, but I can make out from her reaction that I'm starting to sound a little bitter. She corrects herself quickly. I I mean I'm worried. You've been so absent lately that you're living in another world. You're not the way you used to be. It can it can't be that bad, I reply. Maybe I've just changed. Through studying and stuff, I add. You reach certain insights, you know? Evelyn's used to people having some kind of unchanging identity, where everyone always behaves according to their assigned character. Poor soul. I'll try to shake her up a bit. Look, Evelyn, do you ever feel like your vision's becoming clearer? That you're starting to see where the lines connect? I mean, how everything fits together. That it all makes sense. Do you ever feel that way? Well, I don't know, she replies. I'm not that much of a model student. I mean, I get decent grades, she adds, but it's not like that suddenly makes everything clearer, if that's what you mean. Then she smiles. But that you're not that great of a student either, are you, William? I hear that you've been skipping a lot of lectures lately. I'm not getting through to her. If she's coming up with this kind of nonsense, it's not even worth trying. That's got absolutely nothing to do with it, I snap. What am I winding myself up for? She's like a child, unfit for intellectual discourse. Evelyn looks like she's about to defend herself, but I cut her off. Don't worry about me. You and the others. What's the worst thing that can happen? We're students after all. We have all the time in the world. She interrupts me. Is this about what happened with Jasmine? I'm trying frantically to regain control over my thoughts, to shut myself off from all the filth that she's stuffing into my mind. William, what happened with Jasmine? Don't worry too much about that whole situation. She doesn't really care anymore. And, you don't have to be that kind of guy if you don't want to. But try to be a bit nicer at least. At first, you were always so nice, William. Her kind words are so sticky, as if they're weighing me down. The look in her eyes, her tone, the baby fat. It all blends together into something unbearably human. I turn towards the lake to breathe in some fresh air, but what enters my nostrils can't distract my senses. The water smells as sweet and rancid as the whining girl behind me. Poison flows day by day into the tideless sea. I mean, at Spencer's party the other week, you were behaving like an animal. I had no idea what had come over you. Like an animal? A wolf for the cowardly foxes, maybe. I need some time to myself, I say without turning around. I don't want to talk anymore. Are you coming to Matt's New Year's party? You're still invited, but keep yourself in check this time. Thanks. I'll come if I feel like it. She seems hesitant to leave. Then she grabs my arm for a second. See you there. It's still nice that she wanted to speak with me. As she walks away, I stare after her, mesmerized by the rolls of fat that bulge out from under her jacket. For the fishermen, the damming of the inland sea brought about great changes. The precarious ecosystem of brackish water went into decline, and gradually, all the herring and haddock disappeared from the lake. Some fishermen rigged their ships to make the journey through the great floodgates, out onto the ocean. But for the others, a time of dire poverty commenced, and as the lake filled with sweet water, the sea gradually poured from their veins. Many gave up. They took on manual labor jobs on the mainland, or settled on the reclaimed land, where the acres were still plenty. But the fishing towns they left behind fell into despair. 3 of the villages were rendered completely landlocked, incorporated by the polder. It was a surreal sight. A fishing town, with harbor and all, in the middle of sprawling farmland. The village of Warrington, which was the most beautiful of the 3, was made into an open-air museum. The other 2 villages dwindled quickly, and when the last graybeards died in the mid-60s, the government decided to close them down. A few of the most beautiful houses were demolished, brick by brick, and transferred to the museum village. A bunch of developers bought up the wooden buildings that made up the iconic waterfront of Hornerdan and moved them, bit by bit, to the harbor of Bremersburg, where they were sold as rustic studios. The illusion works from up close, the wooden houses gracing the harbor with a historic veneer. But from afar, the painted beams clash with an immense high rises that loom out from beneath them. Even with the sun shining low and the lake beating aggressively against the concrete embankment, there remains something instinctively macabre about the houses. Without the salty air, the clamor of fishwives, the sight of returning cutter boats, they're no more than dried corpses blowing into the wind. East of the harbor, there's a patch of makeshift dunes that stretches almost all the way to Abbotsford. In order to give it back to nature, the city council has decided to let the grass grow freely here, and no longer clear away the fallen trees. There's something about girls like Evelyn that robs them off their youth. They're kids at first, then mothers, but never in between. Like, they've completely skipped that unique period of restless turmoil that follows childhood, and ends only after reason has completely enslaved the human mind. But it's precisely this transition that drives mankind to its greatest heights. When you set off to walk the stars and send your mind towards the outer limits of consciousness, it's usually women that lack it. They become so responsible, so mature, so soon, but it's always a frightened maturity, as though they're trying to distract themselves. It must be their weak physique, their soft flesh, that instills them with a fear of the surreal. The path climbs, and when I'm halfway up the dune, I see two hikers coming in my direction. They're the first people I've encountered here. Bremersburg is mostly sheltering at home, now that rain is forecast. It's a couple, somewhere in their 50s. They're concentrated on their descent, and I'm wondering if I should say hello to them. They pass. The man, gray goatee, shorts, sweaty legs, winks at me. I look over my shoulder. They seem to be having trouble with the last part of the dune. But when they've cleared the dune, they suddenly accelerate. It's crazy to see them take off so quickly. I've lost my train of thought. It's always a shame when you bump into other people on a walk. What's the point of having nature if you can't even be alone in it? But then, actually, this isn't nature. It's the city. In the same sense that the village is the city, and the fields around it. If you're free to determine everything, it no longer matters where you go. Perhaps the highway is the only real nature left on this island. It's dangerous. People die there all the time. No one dares cross it on foot. It's like a river filled with poisonous fish. An unbridgeable gap in the landscape. The vein of a beast that has grown superhuman. The dirt road that I'm following bends off towards the coast, and then runs along the embankment for a while. I'm looking out over the lake and the sky. The lake smells. Dark clouds are slowly drifting inland. It's starting to rain, exactly as predicted. In the distance, I can faintly discern the white glow of a wind farm. 200 turbines have been built on the water, in a perfect grid pattern. On clear days, they stand stately against the blue sky, and the precision in which their blades turn around is mesmerizing to behold. And I think back to the windmill I encountered 2 weeks ago, during that dreadful night, the taste of which still lingers in my mouth sometimes. What had I been so afraid of? The immense shape of the machine? The icy ringing of those magnificent blades, which appeared to cut a groove through the night? There's something odd about those things. Their snow-white hue and faceless nature. They seem all too alien in their appearance. Mankind won't get away with erecting idols like that. It's growing darker. Circles are appearing in the water, and even with great effort, it's difficult to distinguish the turbines in the distance. The fresh scent of leaves blows towards me, and mixes with the fragrance that comes from the lake. The sickening air of decomposing fish. This was meant to be sea. It's supposed to smell of brine out here. Drizzling rain, but there's a rhythm as it falls. And as I pass apartment building after apartment building, the individual drops begin to grow in size. They're falling slower now, tapping down on me. Almost one by one. Suddenly I grow aware of every drop of water that hits me. On my sleeve, my neck, my shoes. my face. A droplet falls onto my upper lip, and I stick out my tongue to catch it. The rainwater and saliva form a mixture that slowly seeps into my throat. A clear taste fills my mouth. And there's something going on with the apartment complex that I'm passing by. The building itself is simple in design, a white block with colored panels below the windows. The central staircases are visible behind a wall of frosted glass. But because the lights are out, they're shrouded in deep darkness. Around the base of the building, a structure has been built. A wide rectangular annex of light brown stone. It's simple people that live here, with lots of things to store. They aren't people that you talk to. All they do is have children. And then they die. I shudder and try to cling frantically to a thought I have stored somewhere. It's a lonely thought that has been emerging quite often recently. Something that distinguishes me from the kind of people that live in these apartments. And it's after I've looked at the building a little longer that I see that the proportions aren't quite right. The broad base structure emphasizes the height of the tower, giving it a strangely monolithic luster. It makes the concrete appear much more massive than it actually is, as if it continues on deep into the core of the complex. And the windows and the stairwells look like they're just painted on as camouflage. And I realize then that terrible things must happen behind those windows. Things that shouldn't see the light of day. That make the greatest crimes pale in comparison. Things that should be entirely reversed. "Table for one?" I call out as I pass through the door. The waiter, tall in a scarlet vest, is sitting at the bar. His massive forehead is adorned with dark brown curls that add a boyish charm to his immense stature. "Just pick a table," he replies with a sob in his voice. He doesn't even get up from his stool. It doesn't smell like food in here at all. There's just a strange metallic odor. I see I'm one of the first guests of the evening. That's why the waiter's so lazy. I pick a table from where I don't have a view of them. The furniture here is black and angular. The walls are illuminated in a colorful gradient. There's a 50s revival napkin holder on my table and a small salt shaker. I pick up the shaker. It's a little glass cylinder closed off at the top with a metal sprinkler cap. I weigh it in my hand for a bit. It fits snugly in my palm, feeling slightly heavier than it looks. Footsteps beside me. Quickly, I put the shaker back in place. The menu. "Can I get you something to drink?" And while the waiter's standing there waiting for a reply, I eye his impressive form. He's a giant, looking down on my table from tremendous heights. His jacket and vest appear almost whimsical on his gargantuan physique. He's starting to glare impatiently. "I'll have a glass of the red house wine," I decide quickly. "Fine." He leaves for the bar and returns 2 minutes later with my order. It's a small glass, ridiculously small even, in his hands. He's filled it to the brim. I'm browsing through the pizza menu. It's the same Italian words chalked up in a modern typeface that return time after time in varying formulas. My pocket vibrates. Abruptly, I slam down the menu and pull out my phone. But the screen's black. It's lying motionless in my hands. Must be my imagination, playing games with me. It's strange how something like a phone can become an extension of your nervous system. I look around to see if anyone has noticed my screw up, but it's still quiet in the restaurant. And as I read further through the menu, I can feel my appetite decaying. Napoletania. I think of the lake and become nauseous again. Quickly, I divert my attention towards the little jar of salt. It's standing there so clinically on the black table, filled to the top. Lid wiped clean. It's as if the waiter removes the shaker after each guest to replace it with a new one. How many of these things does he keep back there? I grab the jar to study it again. It's coarsely built, but it looks brand new. A vertical seam runs over the glassware from top to bottom, where the two halves have been spliced together. I slide my fingers all the way along the seam. And then, underneath, I feel something rough. Maybe a brand name or a batch number. I press my finger firmly over the sprinkler holes so that I can safely turn the jar around. And there on the bottom, I see a splash of dried tomato sauce, the size of a freckle. It's a minuscule dot, almost lost in the shimmer of the translucent glass. I turn over the shaker again and hold it above me so that I can take a closer look. The dark red speck contrasts clearly against the white salt now. Suddenly, the jar is no longer the soulless mass object that I thought it was. It has become human in my hands. Everything as desired, I hear. Something's wrong with the salt, perhaps. I startle, then I turn around and smile. No, nothing. Everything's okay. You can order now. I open up my menu and start browsing through it quickly. Haven't you made a decision yet? The waiter asks. No, it's fine. The Napoletania, please. I answer thoughtlessly. I change my mind immediately. Wait, what? Never mind. Never mind what? The waiter sighs as he heads towards the kitchen. As soon as he's gone, I turn over the salt shaker again and throw myself upon the stand, grains rolling over the tabletop. Slowly, the restaurant fills up. A small company of friends takes the table next to me. 2 men and a young woman. Reflexively, I put the jar back in place. The men are in their late 30s, rough looks. Larger of the two is sitting beside the girl. He's talking loudly. She's laughing, a look of anticipation in her eyes. They order a bottle of Chablis. I don't know how to pronounce that. The most expensive wine on the menu at $32.50. The men argue over who's allowed to sample, and the big one wins. With a disgusted look on his face, he sloshes a sip of wine through his mouth. God damn, that's revolting, he cries out after swallowing. The other guy's in stitches. Just kidding, it's fine. We'll have it. Without realizing, I've begun furiously scratching the inside of my pocket. The smell of food grows stronger. Heat's accumulating inside of me. Can't find its way out. I stop caring about the people at the other table and I pick up the jar of salt again. The refreshing coolness of the glass trinket fills me with new confidence. And as I'm sitting there, an inexplicable urge arises in me to rise up with a loud cry and hurl the little salt shaker against the wall of the restaurant. Just above the table where they're sitting, so that they're showered by the salt and broken glass. I can clearly picture this fearful look in their eyes. The girl scared to death, the small guy startled, and the big one with a spastic, stupid grin on his face. And a tingling sense of triumph starts to bubble through my limbs. I break out in sweat and clench the jar firmly in my fist as it gives me strength. The glass between my fingers has fogged up completely. The food comes. The pizza has a soggy bottom. I cut off a few pieces from the edge and toy around with the center, stirring it into an orange sludge. And after some time, the stench rises to my nostrils. I'm convinced that I'm poisoning myself. As an excuse to hold the shaker again, I scatter some salt over the orange goo on my plate. My eyes return to the little smudge underneath. I try to wipe it off with my napkin, but only my fingerprints disappear from the glass. I place it back, clean thoroughly of all but its stain, in the exact same spot where it stood first. Only I know of her little secret. The company next to me is waiting on food. Their bottle is already 2/3 empty, and the conversation has run dry a few times. The big guy, visually intoxicated, is trying to come up with topics of conversation, but he finds little support from his companions. The girl looks bored. That guy over there's got his already, he comments, pointing at my table with a voice so loud that the whole restaurant can hear him. Though I haven't turned around yet, I can picture them staring in my direction. Please stop, I whisper out, making me feel uncomfortable. The girl lets out an inaudible giggle. You hear that? He feels uncomfortable, the big guy grunts out. His reaction disappoints me. Even now, there's a stupid grin on his face. I clench the shaker tightly in my hand, waiting for the right moment to strike. I stare him down, and when our eyes meet, I detect an ape-like attribute in his expression that scares me a little. They're slick, these people, in ways that makes everything you say come back at you in its lowest form. That girl's laughing at him. She probably wants to be fucked tonight. I grin and raise my glass to her. You want to be fucked tonight, don't you? Though I try my best to pay no attention to the reaction at the other table. I can hear their voices grow silent. They're deformed people. They only laugh at their own jokes. An unmistakable schism is beginning to emerge within the human race. When for thousands and thousands of years on end, stupid breeds stupid, and smart breeds smart. It's inevitable that fundamental shifts will eventually take place. I fish a 20 from my wallet and put it down on the table. On my way to the exit, I can feel the little jar of salt pressing up against my chest in a consoling manner. "3 tickets to Mother Band. Are you going too?" Lars asks, just before the noise of passing fireworks makes all conversation impossible in Matt's spacious penthouse apartment. It's early in the evening. "I'm still waiting to get paid," Evelyn replies. "Really hope it's not sold out by then. Anyway, I think some of Dean's friends will be joining us later. Robert, Spencer." She pauses and casts a shy glance in my direction. "Isabel," she continues. "Are they coming here tonight?" Lars asks. I haven't spoken to Lars for a long time and I feel uncomfortable. Whoops. "I don't think so," Matt replies. "I've kept things small. At midnight we can go to the city, do some partying. No worries. I know I won't be in the mood to do some partying later on. The firecracker ignites down in the streets and the room is filled with a noise of machine gun fire. I'm skiing when they play," Molly shouts over the... "Too bad. But cool that you're going," Evelyn shouts back. I'm getting really tired. The birds are out right now. It's like 6. Once we hit the next chapter, I'll end it. "It's France this year, right?" The girls move over to the sofa. The bell rings and 3 minutes later Bernard comes in, with a sweaty face from climbing the stairs. "Top of the morning to y'all," he calls out in a fake southern accent. Matt laughs. Bernard produces a few bottles of liquor from his bag and sets them out in an exaggerated manner. Most are expensive whiskeys, half full. There's also an unopened bottle of Old Gold among them. "Gosh darn, what a racket outside," Bernard continues, same accent. "Y'all can probably do with a little something against the shock." "Told you it was a nice place," Lars comments to me, his eyes sparkling. "Daddy's on the board of directors." Spasms of revulsion press down upon my eyes, and I take 2 sips of my beer. The fluid has an unmistakably medicinal aftertaste. "I heard about your one-on-one with Evelyn. How are you doing now?" "Great. It was a great talk. Thanks." "So I've been busy," I add. "Doing what?" Lars asks. The beer's strange taste lingers in my mouth, souring my saliva. I want to spit it out, but there's no place to do so gracefully, so I flush it away with a new sip of beer. And the cycle repeats itself. Studying, I want to complete the year after all. "Das hört mich wirklich gut an." Lars exclaims cheerfully, like he really believes it. I don't know what I just said. "You must have a lot to do then. How many lectures have you missed?" "All of them," I say absent-mindedly. "But I'll be fine. Elfriede says I'm a natural." "A natural? That's what she said." He chuckles. I feel obligated to ask him something about his academic pursuits in return, but I know he's doing fine, and to be honest, I've really stopped caring all that much. Studiers are easier to follow than to flunk. Path of least resistance. I take a large swig from my beer and put the rest aside. Do you think we're going anywhere? I ask him. I mean, along the path we've chosen? Lars answers immediately without even asking for clarification. No doubt, William. You always end up somewhere. He leaves for the fridge. I remain for a moment and cast my gaze over the bottles that Bernard brought along. No beer for me anymore, I call to Lars, not really expecting him to return the conversation anyway. Good idea, William, Matt calls out from the other side of the room. A bunch of students have arrived, most of whom I don't even know. Matt's putting on a show. Molly and Evelyn are still talking. Bernard is browsing through a book. I bend over the whiskeys, look around at Bernard, who's giving me the thumbs up, and proceed to pour myself a large glass from a bottle that has an enticing golden glow over it. With my back to the room, I thirstily drink away all remnants of the terrible beer. Bernard seems lonely. You've brought a splendid collection, I compliment him. I'm impressed. He looks up from his book. I started working at a bar where they do tastings. They let me take the remaining bottles home with me. You should see my room. Dream job. Which one did you pick? He asks. The banana 16? Banahaban. The Glenmorangie, so 12. Nice tones. Too complex. That's a good one for beginners. You should try the Lafroig Quarter Cast. Never tasted something so divine. I'm starting to get annoyed, but decide to sit down next to him. Even if it's just to avoid having to see his pedantic head looking up at me. God, I don't know how to pronounce a lot of things. I know that one, numbnuts. Apples and oranges. So, Mr. Alcoholic knows his whiskeys. And to think I'd actually brought the bottle of Old Gold for you. Good Korsakov. A firebomb explodes just outside the window. Bernard jumps up melodramatically. Fireworks! A pagan tradition, he murmurs, while browsing through his book. Costs us billions a year and only causes bodily harm. The masses need to choose for themselves how many fingers they retain, I reply. Matt comes by to announce that the pizzas are here. Perfect bottom. A guy I don't know is holding an endless diatribe in sublimity within the music of Mozart. He keeps exciting himself to tears over the most ordinary things in the world. It's embarrassing to listen to. Lars is trying to interject his stupid opinion into the decision, but he's prattling, also substantiating his naive views with nothing more than an anecdote or two. I promise myself I'll get to be alone for a very long time when the new year comes. As the evening progresses, the intensity of the fireworks slowly recedes. I'm browsing through the book that Bernard was reading. It's about Italian architecture. And it's actually far too interesting to be in Matt's collection. But then again, it looks unread. Jasmine. I know I heard it correctly. I focused on the sound of their voices. Evelyn is talking to the annoying students with Matt and Lars. They're talking about me. I'm trying my best to avert the wave of discomfort that washes over me. I should be far beyond these vulgar feelings of shame by now, and all my worries fall short of the timeless beauty of the facades of a Pisa Nebulna. I pull myself together. One of Umberto Battistieri's villas is worth more than 1,000,000 of these penthouses combined. But I'm disgusted with myself. I don't ever see that. I'm becoming Bernard. Oh, no, not Bernard. They erupt in laughter. I try to shut myself off from the sounds. I'm looking at my friends with the eyes of an outsider. They're so chubby, so ignorant. Sex, beer, and rock and roll, the legacy of their student days. And that, while it's an important time we're living in, an indescribable time. "11:30 to the square," Matt calls out. His proposal is supported reluctantly. To the square! I'm first at the door. Towards the square! Clouds of gunpowder shroud the streets of Bremersburg, thickening as we approach the square. In the shopping street, we merge into the constant stream of humans and file onwards at an equal pace with the hundreds that walk before us. It's a rock-fast tempo, without any leeway. I divert my gaze past the tapestry of washed-out sports jackets and unbuttoned puffer coats to a rancid crust of gel that's sticking to the neck of the guy walking before me. A small group pushes through in opposite direction, and I see a girl, bleached blonde, and a fat girl. 6 guys with stubble, beards, eyes aimed forwards. But not everywhere an old woman's looking on her phone. I stumble. Lars catches me by the shoulder. The sound of explosions swell in the distance. I see 2 plump women with bare arms, British tourists, green hair, crazy suits, some kids, more gel. A man with short hair, a man with short brown hair. 4 young blacks, necktie, 2 men, 2 girls, 1 smiling. One of them was smiling. There's a buzzing of voices all around me, though no one appears to be talking. 10 feet away, a streamer explodes. I look around and see Matt laughing. A fat girl, bald guy, 2 more blacks, girl with black hair, breast trembling. They all have the same gloomy expression on their face. Matt looks just as stupid as the rest of them. Bernard, too. Poser. The faces around me, the bearded guy, the black-haired woman, they're also human. And their ugliness fills me with a sense of dread. I'm one of them, after all, marching in this somber procession. And we hate it here. The bearded man, the young girl, the group of middle-aged women, none of us is having fun. The thunder of fireworks grows into a tempest. I can feel my heartbeat increasing. It's okay, I guess, if no one's having fun. It's something we have in common. The guy with gray hair, the woman, her kids, the man in sports jacket, fat man, fat kid, 6 fat men, teenage girl, a pram. Even in the baby's eyes, there's a dull glimmer of sadness. But he's lucky they let him live. The procession comes to a halt. I hear two bottles being popped close by, then another, and then suddenly, 8 in a row. There's a huge clock hanging on a stage, the crowd sliding closer and closer together. Matt's found a passage. Bernard seems to hesitate, and the pressure and the pressure of the crowd concentrates on the center of my back and increases, and breaks through. My pocket vibrates twice. Shaved necks, body odor, another loud bang close by. Nobody looks around anymore. And after some time, the voices grow silent. All faces turn in the same direction. And for a split second, I experience how the whole crowd comes together in anticipation. Involuntarily, an extreme tension takes hold of me. The hairs on the back of my neck rise up, and for the first time in ages, I feel like I've been impatient lately. So selfish, unforgiving. I should give them all another chance. And in unison, the crowd begins to count down. 10, they chant. It takes me by surprise. 9. I'm disoriented. Frantically, I try to catch. 8. The beat, but I keep missing. 8. I try. 7. They're ahead of me. There's a secret dynamic. 6. I can't keep up. It resonates past me. 5. And I'm alone again. It's too late now. 4. It slipped from my grasps and makes place. 3. 4. That's it. It's time. Something needs to happen. 2. Now something all devouring. 1. And at 0. Everything dissolves into fire. And the cries of jubilation. Hundreds of corks fly into the air as the crowd breaks apart into shards, as suddenly as it came together. The vacant faces that I encounter on the way here have distorted. They're grinning, laughing. I feel a torrent of hands coming on down my shoulders. Lars, Bernard, the annoying Mozart guy. I'm swept away in a dance of joy. The igniting sky embraces me. But I feel like I've finally awoken. Something that has been creeping itself for a while now is rearing its head in full glory. It's obvious that I've waited long enough, that I've given them enough warnings. I can no longer base the purpose of my adult existence on empty friendships, pretty girls, or the childish stories that I conjure up to make it all a little more bearable. These things that are happening to me, I haven't been imagining them. They're succeeding each other more and more rapidly. The little hints, the signals that it's finally time, because no one else sees them. Not my peers, nor my professors, nor the people around me. I'm the only one capable of understanding it all, the way it really is. I'm the only one who can really do something about it. Only I can change it all. Something's hatching in the land reclaimed. I feel it now. Stronger than ever. A great time is upon us. Part 4, Springtide. And with that, that is going to be the end of this stream. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed if you did. And with that being said, that's the end of this stream, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!